Everybody, this is Dream, and this is going to be our FanDuel breakdown of tomorrow's slate. Now, let's keep in mind, so this slate starts at 7 o'clock, but this does not include the Toronto Tampa Bay game that's also at 7 o'clock, though that particular game is on the DraftKings slate, so just be aware that there's extra players on DraftKings for that particular game that doesn't exist on this particular slate. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into the lineup. First of all, I'd just like to shout out the Patreon people. Thank you guys for joining. And also, if you haven't liked this video, go ahead and do that. And then comment below if you have any comments or questions. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't. It just really helps the channel grow. And yeah, so it's been growing really well, but that helps if people do that. So I really appreciate it. With that said, let's get into the players themselves. First of all, I'll give you my 4 stacks. We have the Baltimore Orioles, the Chicago White Sox, the Minnesota Twins, and the Texas Rangers. All 4 teams are in a good positions against bad pitching, and they should have some a positive game setup. So let's go ahead and get into the pitchers that I do like. First of all, for the New York Mets, for Jacob deGrom, he has absolutely just been ridiculous this season. Look at his stats here. He's had except for the week 1, his first week, in August, the first game he pitched, he had 30 fantasy points. Since then, he's only had 1 below 50. He seems to be probably the most locked-in player on the slate by far. Plus, he gets strikeout potential. I mean, he's done good against good teams. The Dodgers, Atlanta, Philly, Atlanta. I mean, it's not like he's doing that against just scrub teams. He's doing it against good teams. And he gets the Cubs at home, which is going to be a huge advantage because the Cubs are not that great, and he's a really good pitcher, so I look at him as to be a super lock at this position. It's kind of ridiculous how good of a lock this is. Yeah, he is pretty expensive, but he's going to be worth it because of the setup. So with that said, I think he's got to be the auto lock. If you do want to come off of him and you want to go someplace else, a good place to go is Yu Darvish. He's been incredibly consistent as well. He doesn't quite have the upside that deGrom has, and he's got a little bit of a tougher opponent against Seattle, but it's still a good position. And he's been consistent over 30 fantasy points on FanDuel since June 1. He hasn't had 1 game below that since that time, and that was a 20-point game against St. Louis on June 1st. So he's been really consistent as of late, and I think that he's in a good position. He does get a pretty good amount of strikeouts usually, though he does give up some earned runs, but that doesn't hurt you quite as much on FanDuel as it does on DraftKings, so it's definitely somebody that's on the table. But overall, I think you have to almost go with deGrom. It's just too valuable of a player, I think. I don't think anybody that passes on him, obviously if he has a bad game, that would suck, but if he does have a great game and you don't use him, then you're probably going to have a very difficult time winning on this particular slate. Even though there are some good pitchers pitching, there's nobody that has the upside that he has and consistency either. So Garrett Cole's out, obviously pitching, but Boston's been playing pretty well, and Clayton Kershaw has not really been what he used to be, and he's got a pretty good matchup against Arizona. So I don't expect either of them to do quite as well as Darvish or deGrom. And then we have Kyle Wright as well pitching for Atlanta, but his upside is pretty capped because he doesn't get the strikeouts. So anyway, that's what I have at pitcher. Obviously, there's not a whole lot there, but just because the top 2 guys are so far ahead of the rest, it's kind of just pick one of those guys and then run the rest. So catcher and first base here. My top pick is Freddie Freeman. Obviously, he's just been hitting the ball extremely well. Lots of really big games, and he's pretty consistent at it. He's had a couple off games, but for the most part, he's doing really solid. I really like how he's been playing, and he's really, finding his groove at the Dodgers now. The next guy I like is Pete Alonso for the Mets. They're in a nice little plus matchup against Chicago, and he's in a good position to potentially get another home run. He likes going up against Chicago, so I definitely like him in this matchup. The next guy that I have is Paul Goldschmidt. Now he's a little bit expensive, obviously at 4,200, but he's been hitting the ball pretty well. He's had a couple off games, but even if he doesn't hit a home run, he can still get you, 9 to 15 points, and so that's always a plus. Then I have Adley Rutschman for the Baltimore Orioles. Let's see if I can find him here. Here he is. They're a nice little plus matchup against Washington. I think that they're a pretty stackable team. Obviously, he's a little bit hit and miss, but he's still been really good, and he's pretty inexpensive at $3,100. So I think he's somebody you have to consider. Will Smith for the Dodgers is somebody I think is in a good position. He's been batting pretty well lately. He's had a couple really gigantic games. Obviously, he's not super consistent, but from a catching perspective, he's one of the better ones available, and his price is pretty inexpensive. Another guy that I like is Matt Olson. Now, he hasn't been hitting the ball quite as well, but he's kind of due, and he's going to be in a good spot here against San Francisco's bad pitching. I think he's in a good position to do something, probably not a home run, but get some doubles and stuff like that, which he's really good at doing. And then another guy I like is Luke Voit for the Washington Nationals in this particular matchup. I think he has some potential. And then finally, Jose Abreu for the Chicago White Sox. He's just been hitting the ball really well lately, and I like what he's been doing. And they're in a really good matchup against Colorado, at home for the White Sox. So overall, I think he's in a good spot. So that's the catcher and first base position. Obviously, you can utilize two people from one position by putting one of them in utility, so that also helps. Because I think you're probably going to want to pull two people from that catcher first base today. Just too many guys at first base that are in the good spots. At second base, my favorite option is Marcus Semien. He's in a nice little plus matchup for Texas against Oakland's below average pitcher, and he's absolutely been having some big games, and he's been pretty consistent as well. So he's been hitting the ball extremely well. Altuve is obviously on the. I don't think the Houston game's on this slate, is it? No, it's not. I accidentally had Altuve written down here. Max Muncy is actually the next guy. Sorry about that. Muncy's been hitting the ball pretty well of late. He's had some really big games. I'm trying to find him, but he's quite a bit cheaper. So he's really inexpensive too. Obviously, he's had a really rough season, but the last 4 or 5 games he's starting to get going, and so if he can continue that, then he'll really pay off. Plus, he's got a nice big plus matchup here. The next guy I like is Gabby Torres for the Yankees. The Yankees finally look like they're going to start playing good baseball again, and he's one of the guys that's actually been pretty decent despite the slump of the rest of the team. I mean, he's been kind of slumpy too, but he's been less slumpy than most of the rest other than Judge. Obviously, Judge has been good regardless. Then Tommy Edman, he's probably one of my favorite options on this particular slate due to his price. He's been batting pretty well, and his price is still only $3,300. And then Luis Garcia for the Nationals. I really like what he's been doing. Now he is, according to this day-to-day, but I think he'll be okay in play. So we'll see. But just make sure to note if he does or not. And if he does, then he's going to be somebody we want to take a look at. Because he's been hitting the ball pretty well. I think he's gotten hits in at least 7 games in a row. So he's been playing really solid. At third base, I've got several guys available here. First of all, Rafael Devers. Now, he's not in the best matchup against Garrett Cole, but he's sometimes matchup proof, and he can have super massive games, and so I like him in this position. Not the most ideal option, but he's still in a good spot. Nolan Arenado also in a really good spot here against Milwaukee, and he's been having some really good games lately, so I think he's in a good position. Then Manny Machado for the San Diego against Seattle's Logan Gilbert. I think he's in a great position to have a big game here. He had a stretch of some really big games, then he had a few off games, but I think he had a couple of good games against the Dodgers, so I think he'll get back at it. And then Josh Donaldson for the Yankees. I do think the Yankees are going to start hitting the ball well again, and he's started the last 4 or 5 games hitting the ball, so I look for him to continue that and get some home runs in the next couple games, and this would be a good place to start. Max Muncy, you already mentioned, and then Austin Riley is in a good spot for the Atlanta Braves against San Francisco. Jacob Junis is not a very good pitcher, and Atlanta should be able to take advantage of the situation. Yeah, they've had a couple off games, but I think he's been pretty consistent outside of the last couple games, so he should have some home run potential in this particular matchup. Then Josh Young for Texas. Now, I haven't really ever considered him on FanDuel because he's a little bit boomer bust, but he's played 4 games in the majors, and he's had 5 games in the majors, and 4 of them he's had really solid games against. And then, of course, the one game was against really good pitching, so I didn't really count that against him too much. And he had a home run yesterday, and he gets another bad Oakland pitcher to go against, so I really like him. And then finally, Yoman Koda. He's really started to hit the ball well for his team. He's had some really gigantic games. He's a little bit boomer bust, but he's somebody you have to take a look at if you need to save money at the position. Excuse me, sorry. Then at shortstop, we have actually several good options here. Trey Turner being one of them. He's absolutely just been blasting the balls of late. He had an okay game yesterday. He had 9 fantasy points. We can live with that. But he's been over 10 in a bunch of games lately, so I really like what he's been doing. Then Carlos Correa for Minnesota against just Kansas City's awful pitcher who I like to go against. He's been hitting the ball extremely well, having a lot of boom games, and so I really like what he's doing. Corey Seager is also a guy I like for Texas against Oakland. He's been hitting the ball pretty well lately. He just got a home run finally, so hopefully he can continue that stretch and get some more home runs. And then Francisco Lindor, I think he hit a home run yesterday actually too, and he's been doing really good as of late. He had a little bit of a bum area, but he's starting to get consistent again. It seems like teams are going through stuff, but sometimes they just need to get going, and once they do, then they start flying. Xander Bogaerts is another guy I really like. He is absolutely just murdering the ball lately. I don't love his matchup because he's going up against Cole, but I think he's somebody you have to consider based on the production he's putting out. And then Gunnar Henderson for Baltimore, he's been hitting the ball extremely well. He's been getting hits. Now, the only issue with him is that he's kind of boomer bust because he does need to get a home run probably to do something big. But he does have the potential, so he's somebody you have to consider. Dansby Swanson is somebody I like for Atlanta today. He's been hitting the ball okay lately, and he's been getting some home runs mixed in here, and so I expect him to have a good game again against San Francisco. And then Isaiah Falafa, I think that's how you say his name. He's actually been pretty consistent for the Yankees the last about 7 or 8 games, and so I look for him to kind of boost the Yankees and give them a boost. And then finally, one of the guys that I really like, is probably my favorite option at this position, to be honest, is Elvis Andrus. He's absolutely just having some big games lately. He's having a really good season now, and so I really like what he's doing, so I look for him as a good option at shortstop. So it's also really inexpensive. Excuse me. And finally, last but not least, outfielders. So we got Aaron Judge, who is just absolutely, crushing the ball. He hasn't had an under 10 fantasy point game since September 2nd. So, yeah, I mean, that's just funny. I just expect him to continue it, and he's a home run threat wherever he comes up to bat, and he's going against Nick Pivetta. And Pivetta's the guy I really like to get guys up against, and so, I mean, there's been several Yankees in this lineup, and so, in this read-up, so I definitely think he's a good option. Giancarlo Stanton is super inexpensive on FanDuel, despite the fact that he's had 2 massive games where he hit home runs. Like I said, I feel like that the Yankees are starting to get going again. He definitely has home run potential in this game, and so you got to take a look at him, especially against Pivetta, who's fun to stack against. And then Cedric Mullins for the Baltimore Orioles, he's in a good spot. He's been hitting the ball pretty well as of late. And then Mookie Betts, I think I already mentioned him. And then Ronald Acuna, he's kind of in a spot where he's going to have to get some good hits and stuff in order to win. But he's actually been hitting the ball pretty well. He's still scoring a lot of points. He's just not hitting the home runs, and he's sort of due for that. So let's hope he can get one going tomorrow. And then Eloy Jimenez for Chicago White Sox. He's been playing pretty well lately. He's had 5 straight games almost over 20 points, 12-point game. But he's been hitting the ball really well. He had a little bit of a slump at some point, but he's doing a lot better now. I really like what the White Sox are doing as of late. Jock Peterson for the San Francisco against Atlanta. He's just in a good position against Kyle Wright. and so I think he's got some upside in this matchup. And then Brandon Nemo, he's been playing really well lately, just really hitting the ball well, and his only bad game really was yesterday, so he's kind of due to keep doing well. And then Michael Harris for the Atlanta Braves. I don't know that there's too many guys that have been hotter than him. He's been hitting the ball extremely well lately, and I expect him to continue. He almost had a really big game against San Francisco, but he got caught on the base pass on a mistake. So sometimes that happens to guys, but he almost blew the game open for them yesterday. AJ Pollock is the final guy. He's been playing pretty well as of late. He's not going to necessarily hit a home run all the time, but he's a guy that's going to get hits and get you on base and get RBIs and stuff. So I tend to like what he's doing lately. I think the White Sox are a really good stack. I guess I should add the Yankees to the good stack because the more I think about it, I didn't start with them in the stack aspect, so you can include them to being a stack as well. But so that's what I got for the slate. Thank you guys again for liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you to the Patreon people, and have a nice day, guys.